I was dead in my sins, hopeless, any dream of life crushed. I don't know why he chose me when I had nothing to offer him. But that's who he is. His love flowed through my soul. He said, awake, awake. And it's no longer I who live, but he, the glorious one, life itself, Christ Jesus, who brought me back to life.
Good morning to everybody this morning. I know, hey, I'm proud of you. It is so cold out there today, and but you're here, and I mean that genuinely. I think that what it says is that you value what we have here. That it is important that we show up and that we benefit from each other, and also that we express our worship to God. So glad to have you here leading us in worship this morning. Taylor got really sick earlier this week and wasn't sure he was going to be able to make it, and so that was just awesome. And I really appreciated worship. I'm looking forward to the second set actually already. It was great. I want you to go in your mind to the best vacation that you ever had. Think about it. What was the best one that you've ever had? For me, it was probably all the way back in 2009. My parents sent me and my sisters and our families to Hawaii. And it was in Maui. Anybody ever been to Hawaii or even Maui? That's a lot of hands here in Oklahoma. I love it. Okay, great. I love it. It's my favorite place on the earth, and that was I especially loved it because and Charlie, my daughter's in here, and I'm sorry, but that was before we had kids, and it was so great. It was so amazing. We got to just go explore the island and hang out with our family, and I remember each morning waking up at our hotel, and I would just sit out on the balcony and just read the Bible, and it was just the most peaceful thing ever, and I loved it. We went with my two sisters. They had kids, and we stayed at this resort that was like an all-inclusive kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about, where just food is free, I mean, it's not free. We all know that, but you already paid for it. And so I took them on a dessert tour, not desert tour, but I said, let's go on a dessert tour. So we went every single restaurant and got all the desserts and just ordered those. And we were hurting and we paid for it, but it was a memory, and I love it. Like, go back to your vacation. What is it for you that would be like the best vacation? We went to Walt Disney World a few years ago, and that was not peaceful at all. It was the other end of the scale, but it was great, and I love those memories. You probably have some of those. In fact, I would venture to say that those memories for you are probably some of the best memories and the best times of your whole life. And we have those periods in our life where those high points exist. Your wedding day. You probably remember that as like on that day, it was probably a special day for you. The first time you bought a house, right? Maybe when you got a brand new car, right? Those are high points in our life, right? And don't you wish that those could just last forever? I remember the movie Groundhog Day, and he's doing this terrible day over and over and over, and he's like, man, couldn't it have been one of the greater days that I had that I just relived over and over? Don't you wish that those times could just last? But we all know that as great of a time and as good times as we have it, we also experience the opposite. Every single one of us experiences the absolute worst. You know what it is to have a bad day. We all have those. And there's probably a lot of us in here that have not just had a bad day, and maybe even not just a bad month, but maybe we've had a bad year. And maybe some of us, we look back at maybe even 2023, and we look at it and say, you know what? Good riddance, goodbye, looking forward to the next year. I mean, we know what it's like to have a bad season of life because all of us have them. And those times can leave us numb and even dead to God, feeling dead in our relationship with God. And sometimes that's because of our own doing. Let's be real. Let's be honest. Sometimes I look back on some of the bad choices in my life, and that's on me. 100%. I can't blame God. I can't blame anybody else. I just got to blame the guy in the mirror. And sometimes it's not me. It's not you. Sometimes it's beyond our control, and it's just things that happen. My personal hard times began from the very beginning, when I was born. My mom and dad, they were really young, and when they got married, and really young whenever they had me. My mom was 19, and my dad was 20. And so, and also they didn't know the Lord, and they weren't what you would say very healthy people. That's a mixture for disaster right there. And so I was born into a pretty tumultuous home. And my mom and dad eventually got divorced. And my mom fought for custody of me, but not because she wanted me. She fought for custody because she didn't want my dad, who wanted me, to have me. And so the lawyer actually saw right through it, and he said, I think what's going on is this. So he told my dad, he said, let her have me. And then she'll recant on that and give you away. And what an awful hard decision for my father, but he did it. And he agreed, you can have him. And then she took me in, and then she gave me away because she didn't want me. My own mom didn't want me. My earliest memory in life is I was at her house, and me and my little sister, Lori, was in a bedroom and in a crib. And I remember crawling out of the crib. I was able to crawl out, and I got out, and I remember feeling very proud. I was super excited. I did it. And I went to the door, and I could barely reach the door handle. And I was able to turn it just enough, and I got out. And we were upstairs, and I remember walking down the hallway and to the left, and down the hallway, at the end of the hallway was her room. And I remember walking in there, and she was on the other side of the bed, sitting on the edge of the bed, looking towards the wall. And I went in there and was like, I did it. I was looking for praise. And I got in there, and she jumped around, and I got the feeling that she was doing something that she wasn't supposed to be doing. She was startled, and she was not happy that I was in there. Now, mind you, I'm 3 years old. I don't know. And so she grabs me and rushes me back into that bedroom and puts me back in the crib and closes the door again. Well, what do? I crawl out of the crib, but this time I went to go to the door, but it wouldn't open. I don't know how, but she locked it. And I remember at that time feeling very scared and very afraid. That's my very earliest memory. And my whole world was messed up. My family tells me now that whenever my dad got custody of me, that I ran around the living room whenever we'd have family gatherings and things, and I would just go bite everybody. I would bite anybody and everybody. And my grandpa loved to tell the story that he told me one time that I came up to him and I had my mouth wide open, and he just stuck his arm out and said, go ahead and bite it and see if I don't throw you across this whole room. Grandpas are great, aren't they? And he said, I just backed away and never did it again to him. But my whole world was messed up. Inside, as a little boy, I was messed up. Man, we all know hard times. Every single one of us could stand up here and tell a story, and probably a heartbreaking story, of what you have gone through in your life. But just because, and here's where I want to pivot, just because we go through hard times, it does not mean that it has to make us worse people. Some people have the ability to not only survive those hard times, but some people actually have the ability to come out stronger and better on the other end. Man, I've been able to sit with many of you guys on your couches and visit with you, and I've heard your stories, and man, there is some real hurt that is represented in this room. Not all of us are going through hard times right now, but we know that we're either in hard times or we're between hard times, because hard times are coming for us all. And that's why I think it's important to talk about this series, because all of us struggle. How do we come back to life even through the tough times? If we're open to it, God can actually use those things to grow us in our faith in stronger and deeper ways. Because here's the thing, God doesn't waste pain. God knows your pain, and He is not going to waste your pain. But the key to understand is this, that God doesn't cause the bad things. He doesn't do evil things so that your faith can grow. The tough times means that the world isn't the way it's supposed to be. But God can use the most difficult moments in our lives to transform us into being better people. But the key is how we respond. And we get to decide that, if we're going to let God use those tough times to grow our faith or to conquer our faith. Probably one of the best examples of this comes in the book of John. So if you have your Bibles, turn to John, and specifically John 11. Now, it appears that John was Jesus' best friend, right? It calls him the one that Jesus loved, right? But Jesus had other friends as well. And we're going to see this in John 11. And this is an incredible story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. And so he had three close friends in this story, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were all siblings, and they were close. In fact, John 11:3 says that the sisters sent word to Jesus, and here's what they said to Jesus. They said, "Lord, the one that you love is sick." And then it says it again in verse 5, and it says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. John is emphasizing the point that he was close with these guys. He was really close with them. Now, as you know, Lazarus, he got super sick. And obviously his sisters, Mary and Martha, were really concerned. And so they sent a message to Jesus. And Jesus had healed a lot of people by this time. And so it just stands to reason that obviously Jesus would heal Lazarus. That's one of his best friends. But things didn't go that way. And we're going to get into the story. Things didn't go that way. Jesus did not rush. He did not, oh my gosh, okay, let's set everything down, let's go. He did not. Actually, he took his time, and things did not turn out the way that Mary and Martha had hoped. In fact, Lazarus died. And you got to imagine how confused and upset Mary and Martha were. Jesus let him die. And Jesus had the power to stop it. Did Jesus make a huge mistake here? These people are upset. Jesus could have stopped, but he didn't. Had to be difficult to understand. And Jesus eventually showed up, but he was late, way late. And Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. So Martha says this to Jesus. Get in John chapter 11, verse 21. And here's what she says to Jesus. He shows up and you're like, hey, sorry, bud, the party's over. You're late. And she says, Lord, Martha said to Jesus, if you had been here, if you had been here, I mean, she's upset. If you would have showed up, my brother would not have died. But I know that even now, God will give you whatever you ask. I mean, she's upset, guys. If you had been here, what were you doing? You can almost hear that conversation. What were you doing? Did you not get the message? I'm pretty sure you did, because the guy who I sent to you, he came back. You should have been with him. Where were you? Why did you not, was it not clear to you? I said he was dying. Yeah, it was clear. She's upset and confused. And the question is, do you care? Do you even care what I'm going through? Now, most of us believe that God has the power to change things in our lives. But sometimes that just makes it worse, right? That he had the power, but then he chose not to. To many people out in the world, that seems unethical. If it's not hard for God to help us, it's almost evil that he doesn't help us. Why? If he could do it, just do it. Well, let's get into that. Here's the answer to that. Jesus did not cause Lazarus to get sick. We need to start there. He did not cause Lazarus to get sick. God does not do evil things in this world, but he does allow them. And the question is why? Why does he allow evil things to happen? Jesus' brother, James, he opens up his epistle in the New Testament with this question. He opens it up. In James chapter 1, verse 2 and 4, it says this, 2 through 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces what? Perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work. He said, let it finish its work. There's work going on inside of us, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James's church was struggling. They were struggling with a famine that was going on, and they were struggling with persecution against their church. And he points out that God, and he addresses this too. He's saying, look, God could stop it, but there's something deeper going on here, something higher than stopping the pain that's going on here. And he says that God is going to use those tough times to produce what? Strength. And with strength comes maturity. Maturity in faith. And that's the goal. That's the goal. The goal is not what? To avoid struggle in life. That's not our goal as Christ followers. If you paid attention to Jesus and his example at all, his goal was never to just avoid struggle. No. The goal for us is that we would all become strong and mature followers of Christ every day. We want to be more like Christ, able to trust him deeper, able to follow him wherever. That's our goal. So much so that James actually says to be thankful for tough times, to be grateful for it. Wow, that just don't make sense to anybody but Christ followers. Back to the Lazarus story. I think what's interesting is the second thing that Martha said to Jesus. Remember, she said, but I know that even now God will give you whatever you ask. Standing in front of Jesus, she's broken and hurt, but she still believed, and she still trusted God. And that's the question for us. is this. In our hardest moments, can we really trust God? Why could Martha trust in Jesus? Because she knew him. She knew him. Then it says in John 11:33 through 37, it says, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Where have you laid him? He asked. Come and see, Lord, they replied. Verse 35, Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, see how he loved him. But some of them said, could he not have opened the eyes of the blind have kept this? Sorry, could not he who opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying? When it says deeply moved here, that's interesting to us. Deeply moved. It's the Greek word embryomai, okay? Embryomai. That's the Greek word for it. And it says it again in verse 38. He says he was deeply moved again, same word. And it literally means indignant. Not that he was deeply sad, he was, but it highlights the fact that he was deeply indignant. Jesus is upset. He's upset that things are not how they were supposed to be. This was not the plan. Sin and evil and the consequences of it were not part of the plan. He's upset about the right things. And it says Jesus wept. As kids, we all loved that verse because we always wanted to memorize a verse of the Bible. And so John 11:35 was it. Jesus wept. Boom, got it. All right, going home. But we wonder where God is in our suffering. And here Jesus is weeping. And he cried over the loss of his friend, over the pain of Mary and Martha, and the pain that they were experiencing. And Jesus, he showed up and he sat with them in the middle of their toughest moment and he cried. And Jesus does the same for us. Don't you doubt it for a second that Jesus knows the pain that you're in and he's there with us, sitting with us in those moments. He cares about the pain. But this wasn't the end of the story. People then, we got to understand, people then weren't buried in the dirt like we do today. They were buried in these rocks that were hewn out and caves. In fact, we have a picture of one here today. It probably looked something a lot like this. In fact, this is what they call Lazarus' tomb if you go there today. In John 11:39 through 44, it reads this. Take away the stone, he said. But Lord, said Martha, the sister of the dead man, by this time there is a bad odor, for there's been there for 4 days. Then Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God? So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked up and said, Father, I thank you that you've heard me. I knew that you always heard me, but I said this, what? For the benefit of the people standing here, that they may believe that you sent me. When he had said this, Jesus called out in a loud voice, Lazarus, come out. The dead man came out, and his hands and feet were wrapped in strips of linen, and the clothes around his face. Jesus said to them, take off the grave clothes and let him go. Let me ask you a question. Why did he do it? Why did he raise Lazarus from the dead? Did he pick Lazarus because that was his friend? And does he do that today? Does he pick people to heal or not heal because he likes them or doesn't like them? Look, the purpose behind this miracle was so much more than that. Look at the very next verse. John 11:45 says, therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary had seen what Jesus did, and what happened? They believed in him. Jesus used this situation to grow people's faith. These tough circumstances that Mary and Martha and Lazarus experienced made the faith of so many people grow stronger. That was the goal here. It wasn't so that Lazarus could have a few more days at life. It was to grow people's faith. Now, I know what some people might be thinking. Of course their faith grew because Jesus healed him, but not all situations turn out like that. Here's the thing. Lazarus died again. And Jesus didn't keep showing up every time and raising him from the dead. He didn't keep healing him over and over. Even Jesus, whenever he was, the night before he was to be crucified, he was crying out to the Father for help. And God did not change what would happen to him. Our goal in life cannot be to avoid all pain and hardship. Our goal in life is to become better followers of Jesus. And tough times can grow your faith, but only if we respond to it. So naturally, the question is this: how do we respond? How do we respond? Destroy our faith. Well, the first one is this: reevaluate what's important. Unfortunately, for some of us, hard times are the only thing that helps us to see clearly. You've heard so many people say that after tough times that they thought what they thought was important turned out to not be so important after all. Man, tough times can really be a gift if they help us to correct what our life is built on. We can look back at those tough times and be thankful and grateful for it because they can be a gift that has set us straight. So many times we thought we were building our lives on solid rock foundation, but when that storm came and it all falls down, it's revealed. What a gift that can be. None of us want to get to the end of our life and realize that we had it all wrong the whole time. No, we want to get it right now. Tough times can absolutely bring us back to life because they make clear to us what is true and what is false. Now look, I don't like doing funerals. But at funerals, people are really thinking about their own life. They're really thinking those things through. What is true and what is false in my life? At weddings, you're just there for entertainment. So I don't like the reason that funerals happen. I don't. But at least funerals, you're speaking to people and we're reevaluating what's important. Be okay with asking yourself the hard questions. In Psalm 139, man, I hope we all have this one highlighted and underlined in our Bible. 139, verse 23, it says this: "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts." In verse 24, it says, "See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way of everlasting." That is a dangerous prayer. That is a dangerous prayer. But be willing to ask the hard questions and allow God to speak the truth in your life. And when that happens, God can now use you in great ways. Rick Warren said this: "A refinement comes before a new assignment." God wants to use you, and he will use you, but you got to deal with your issues first. And many times, tough times help us to do that. So, here's your homework. I've got homework for you today. Get alone with God and take a piece of paper. And I want you to pray through Psalm 139, 23, and 24. Ask him, just say, "God, reveal in me where I have gone wrong." And then just start writing down what comes to mind. Man, I've done this so many times, and I'm never happy about it whenever I'm doing it. It's embarrassing. I hate it. None of us like for our sinful attitudes and our sinful ways to be brought into the light. None of us like that, but it's so healthy for us. And to begin to purge those things out of your life. Look, you can't rectify what's wrong until you identify what's wrong. Number 2 is this: shorten your goals. Why would I say shorten your goals in tough times? Sometimes, look, in tough times, you can't see very far out ahead. You can't be worried about, a year from now. Sometimes it's like, I've got to put one step in front of the other. I've got to just get through today, right? And take life day by day. Psalm 119, verse 105 says this: "Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path." A lamp at your feet, it's not your brights on your car that's showing 10 miles out ahead. A lamp unto your feet shows you the next few steps. And why? Why does God do that? Because it keeps us reminded that we're dependent on God, that we don't see the plan. In fact, sometimes if he showed you the plan from 10 years from now, it'd be overwhelming. You'd be like, no, I can't do that. There's no way that you could use me in that way. No way. But he can show you the next few steps. And it keeps us from drifting away. In hard times, we're so worried about things down the road. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. So, the third thing is this. Lean in to Jesus. It's only when we're connecting to Jesus regularly. That's what I mean by that. Connecting to Jesus regularly. That's when we find peace about our situation. When you're leaning into Jesus every day, you are reminded who is in control. And God speaks to us when we listen to him. And did you guys know this? I mean, you probably have observed this in your own life, that very rarely will God shout at you. He does. There are times. But I find that most times when God is speaking to us, he does it through a whisper. I used to have a teacher who would say, I'll wait. You know what I'm talking about? And they would just stand there until all the kids got quiet. You know, for me, that was always a ticket to like, okay, wait on me then. And then that didn't go well. But yeah, she would say, I'll wait, you know. And I feel like sometimes God is sitting there saying, I'm going to wait on you. Why? Why does he do that? God waits till we make space for him, that we're searching for him. If you seek him, what? You'll find him. But you have to look. You have to keep looking. Last one I'd say is this: be grateful. Be grateful. We all get to choose our attitude. And if we have a terrible attitude during hard times, we're only going to make the tough times, what? Tougher. Did you guys know that doctors have done studies about this? And did you know that do you know what the healthiest attitude is? It's actually not love. It's gratitude. It's gratitude. When we're grateful, it changes our outlook, our whole outlook. Our attitude is everything. God uses grateful people, but God will not use complainers and cynics. Gratitude is the antidote for discouragement. You cannot be grateful and depressed at the same time. Gratitude destroys depression. And let me say the opposite. If you don't stay grateful, you will become cynical. There are things that will hurt you, and if you don't stay grateful, you'll become cynical. Nobody likes to be around a cynical person. And have you noticed that in our country right now, cynicism is on the rise? People don't trust anything anymore. We have to pull ourselves out of that and learn to be grateful people. This is what James was saying. Even when tough things are happening, we can find things to be grateful for. And that is hard. Let me tell you a story about that just happened to me this week. I had a guy in my life that I really admired. I had a guy in my life that I was good friends with. And he got super upset with me. And he blasted off a text message to me that was really harsh. And what he was upset about actually turned out to be totally untrue and totally false. But he didn't know that. He assumed that what looked like something had gone wrong was actually on the up and up. And man, I tried. I said, no, look, here's what happened. And here's, and I texted him, He said, I'm done talking about it. And I don't know if our relationship is going to last. I don't know. And it's breaking my heart. Breaking my heart. So what did I do? Man, I was tempted, to dress him down, to let him know, you don't know what you're talking about, son. You don't know. You think you know, but you don't know. I mean, I was so tempted. Have you ever typed out a message? Like, and a famous football coach always said, just don't press send. Don't, because you can't get it back. I was tempted, guys. And it hurt, man. But God stopped me from doing that. And I just sat down and I just prayed for him. And I just prayed thanks for him in my life. I'm so grateful for this man. Truly, I am. And I hope that our relationship is not over. But when I prayed a long prayer of gratitude, and let me tell you guys, it didn't happen in 1 minute. I had to pray it over and over and over. But every time I prayed that prayer, it calmed me down and it brought peace to the situation. Man, there's one more thing that I was grateful for, though, too. It reminded me that I should never go into conflict without asking questions first. I should never go into conflict just lobbing accusations, because that makes fools of us all. Now, I wasn't happy that it happened, but I remain grateful because hate is not an alternative that I want in my life. We can always find something to be grateful about. No matter what you're going through, you can choose to trust God in your circumstances. I just want you to simply pray this. God, I trust that you're with me, and I trust that you can use this to grow my faith. We don't know it. We don't know what's down the road. We don't know that, but we can trust it. Tough times don't have to defeat us or break down our faith. Our God is a God that can take what's awful, what's hard, and he can use those tough times to do amazing things in our life and make us better people from it, to bring us back to life. God is working in your life. Let me end by saying this. I told you about my mom who gave me up. She didn't want me, so she gave me away. I wasn't happy that happened. I look back at that and what kid deserves to go through that? But you know what happened? My dad, he was all messed up inside, and he had me. But thank goodness he met another woman named Stephanie. And that's who I call Mom to this day. She was a Christian, and her and Dad got married. She converted my dad and totally transformed his life. I was raised in a Christian home because of that. Look, I promise you I wouldn't be standing here today. Chances are I wouldn't have the family that I have. I wouldn't have the happy life that I have right now if it wasn't for Stephanie, my mom. God is working in your life even when you don't see it. Be wise enough to look for him. God may be bringing you back to life through your pain. Let me pray.